The freeze before the flee. How avoidants become emotionally paralyzed. You thought they were cold, uninterested, detached. But what if I told you they weren't running at all? Not at first. They were freezing, not emotionally unavailable, but emotionally paralyzed. This is what no one tells you about the avoidant. They don't disappear because they don't care. They vanish because their body believes connection is danger. Let's unravel it. Let's start with a moment you might remember. You opened up. Maybe you cried. Maybe you shared something raw. Maybe you just needed to be held. But instead of moving toward you, they went quiet, still, blank, and then gone. This wasn't just emotional detachment. It was nervous system shutdown. The avoidant doesn't leave because of you. They leave because of what connection awakens in their body. And that's not logic. That's biology. Let's break it down. The human nervous system has three survival responses: fight, flight, freeze. When danger is sensed, the body picks a path. Some run, some fight, but some freeze. And avoidance? They've mastered that last one, long before they mastered their poker face. Imagine this. You grew up in a space where emotional closeness equals engulfment, where crying led to ridicule, where needing someone made you weak, where independence was rewarded and vulnerability was punished. If you were that child, your body adapted. You didn't ask for too much. You didn't cry loudly. You didn't let yourself need. You learned that safety was silence, distance, self-containment. And now, as an adult, your body still believes that. So when someone comes close, loves you deeply, sees you fully, needs you genuinely, your nervous system doesn't say, "This is beautiful." It screams, "Danger." And what does it do? Not fight, not run, not yet. It freezes. This is why the avoidant often appears numb, emotionally flat, unresponsive, distant. It's not that they don't feel. It's that feeling too much has become unsafe. To feel, they'd have to thaw. And to thaw would mean facing the grief of every unmet need they buried long ago. So instead, they stay cold, frozen, because staying frozen is safer than risking the burn of being vulnerable. And to the outside world, they look aloof. But inside, they're holding back a flood. Let's talk about this flood. The avoidant has needs. They crave love, connection, touch, but their body holds a deep mistrust of it. So every time someone gets close, a battle begins inside. One part of them wants to reach for you. Another part of them is screaming to pull away. That war inside is exhausting. So they shut down, go quiet, disappear, and you're left thinking, did I do something wrong? Did I say too much? Was I too much? But here's the truth. Their nervous system was already overwhelmed, not by you, but by the memory of everything they never got to feel safely. You see, their reaction isn't about the present moment. It's a replay of moments when vulnerability was punished, of times when closeness meant suffocation, of early wounds that told them, you're on your own. Let's say that again. Avoidants don't fear love. They fear what love unlocks. All the grief, all the unmet needs, all the parts of themselves they had to kill off to survive childhood. When you get too close, you awaken those frozen parts. You knock on the door they sealed shut years ago, and their body goes into lockdown. It's not because they hate you. It's because they haven't learned to feel safe with themselves, let alone with someone else. Here's the kicker. Avoidants often don't even realize they're frozen. They just think, this is too much. I need space. I'm not ready. It's them, not me. But really, it's their nervous system replaying old survival scripts. This is where compassion comes in, not to excuse their behavior, but to understand it. Because if we don't understand the freeze, we'll keep mislabeling it as cruelty, indifference, manipulation, and we'll never see the child behind it all, the one who learned to be ice, because the world never felt safe enough to be fire. So what can you do if you're on the receiving end? First, know it's not your fault. You didn't cause the freeze. You just touched the part they buried. Second, don't chase the shutdown. The more you push, the deeper they'll retreat. Not out of malice, but out of panic. Third, protect your own nervous system. Just because someone is frozen doesn't mean you have to stay in the cold with them. Your warmth is sacred. Don't waste it trying to thaw someone who's not ready. And if you're the avoidant, it's time to stop telling yourself you're heartless. You're not. You're just frozen. But frozen isn't your fate. It's a response. And responses can be rewired. It starts with safety, with learning to be with your feelings slowly, with recognizing when you shut down and choosing, bit by bit, to stay. Because the truth is, you don't want to run forever. You just never learned how to stay. Let's end with this. The avoidant isn't distant. They're stuck, frozen in a pattern that once kept them alive. Now, it keeps them alone. But every freeze holds a thaw. Every shutdown hides a longing. And every avoidant is one safe connection away from learning that closeness doesn't have to mean collapse. The push-pull pattern. Why avoidants crave closeness then panic. They text you out of nowhere. They say they miss you. They want to see you. Their words feel warmer, softer, like the ice is melting. And just when you think maybe, just maybe, they're opening up, they pull back, cancel plans, go quiet. Again, it feels like whiplash. You ask yourself, how can someone be so hot one moment and so cold the next? But this isn't a game. This is a nervous system caught in contradiction. Avoidants live inside a paradox. They long for connection, but fear what it might cost. It starts like this: a moment of safety, a tiny spark of hope. They feel close to you, and for a second, it feels good. Their guard lowers. They reach for you, and you feel it. That flicker of who they really are beneath the freeze. But then, their body remembers. It remembers the rules. Don't get too close. Don't need too much. Don't lose yourself. Because once upon a time, needing others wasn't safe. So even when love shows up kind and calm, their body goes into alarm. So they pull away, not to hurt you, but to survive themselves. They go silent not to punish you, but to stop the spiral in their own chest. This is the push-pull cycle. Pull you close. Feel warmth. Panic. Push you away. Feel alone. Miss you. Reach again. Repeat. It's not manipulation. It's dysregulation. Imagine love being both a refuge and a threat. Every time you come close, they feel something awaken. Something they've spent years burying. But awakening doesn't always feel good. It can feel like drowning. You say, I love you. They hear, you might leave. You say, I'm here. They hear, you'll need too much. You say, let's be close. They hear, you'll take my freedom. The message you send isn't the message they receive, because trauma distorts the signal. To someone with an avoidant imprint, closeness can feel like being swallowed, not because you're overwhelming, but because their nervous system never learned how to stay tethered and free at the same time. So every step closer to you feels like a step further from themselves. That's the tragedy. They push not because they don't care, but because caring hurts. Because the more they love you, the more they fear losing themselves. They grew up learning to earn love by disappearing, by not needing, by not taking up space. So when you invite them into intimacy, they're not just learning to love you, they're learning to reappear. And reappearing is terrifying when you've spent your life invisible. So when you feel them retreat, know this: Their silence is the sound of an internal storm, a war between longing and fear, closeness and collapse, connection and control. You're not imagining the tenderness. They meant it. They really did. But after the tenderness comes the terror, not of you, but of themselves in your presence. Because to be close, they'd have to be seen. And to be seen, they'd have to exist in a way they've never felt allowed to. This is the push-pull. Pull you close, because they ache for connection. Push you away, because connection triggers collapse. They're not playing with your heart. They're trying to protect their own, even if it breaks yours in the process. So what do? You anchor yourself. Don't chase the pull. Don't punish the push. Hold your center. Because if you lose yourself trying to hold them, you'll both disappear. Behind the armor, how avoidants learn to mistrust love. Love isn't the enemy, but for the avoidant, it feels like betrayal. Not because you betrayed them, but because love once came wrapped in confusion. Words said, "I care," but actions said, "Be quiet." Arms hugged tight, then pushed away when the tears came. This is how avoidants learned to mistrust love. Love meant unpredictability. It meant strings. It meant walking on eggshells. It meant adapting, or else. So they built armor, not around their heart, but around their nervous system. Because when love made them shrink, safety became solitude. You see, avoidance isn't born. It's built. Forged in families where emotions were too much, where tears were inconvenient, where vulnerability was met with distance, criticism, or control. The avoidant child doesn't just feel neglected. They feel erased. So they erase themselves to survive. They become low maintenance, easygoing, independent, not because they were naturally that way, but because it was safer to need nothing than risk needing too much. They grew up earning connection by staying small, by not crying, by not needing, by not being a problem. So now, as adults, they flinch when you see them, because being seen never felt safe before. Here's the heartbreak. Avoidants crave love deeply. They just don't trust the shape it comes in, because love has always had a double edge. So when you love them, it brings back everything they couldn't feel growing up. Not just the pain, but the shame. Shame that says, if I let them see the real me, they'll leave. If I open up, I'll be too much. If I depend on them, I'll be disappointed. If I feel, I'll fall apart. This shame lives under the armor, not in their thoughts, but in their body. That's why love doesn't land. It hits the shield, the compliments, the care, the commitment. It all gets filtered through years of mistrust. So they brush off your kindness, deflect your affection, downplay your presence, not because they don't want it, but because they don't know how to let it in. And when you get tired, when you start to pull back, that's when they panic. Because even though they push you away, they don't want you to go. They just don't know how to let you stay. It's a painful paradox. They test your distance, because your distance feels familiar, and familiarity feels safe, even when it hurts. So how do you love someone who's armored? First, stop trying to rip off the shield. You can't force someone into vulnerability, but you can offer a different experience. One where love doesn't demand, where closeness doesn't overwhelm, where safety isn't earned. It's offered. Second, know this. Their armor isn't about you. It was welded in childhood, long before you ever arrived. You didn't cause their mistrust, but you might be the first to help rewrite it. And if you're the one wearing the armor, it's not your fault you learned to shield your heart. But that armor is heavy, isn't it? You're tired of being untouched by warmth. You're tired of being alone in a crowded room. You're tired of holding your own hand in the dark. You don't have to take off the whole shield at once. Just loosen the grip. Just soften a little. Just stay a little longer. Because not everyone who comes close is here to wound you. Some people just want to hold the real you, even if you're still learning how to show up. Touch me, don't trap me. The avoidance hidden fear of dependence. There's a moment when you reach for them, not physically, emotionally. You ask for more closeness, more consistency, more presence, and they tense, not visibly, but inwardly. You've touched a nerve they barely know is there. It's not your request that scares them. It's what the request represents. Dependency, need, reliance, the very things they were conditioned to fear. To the avoidant nervous system, dependence equals danger. Because dependence once meant disappointment, abandonment, shame, control. So now, when you say, I need you, they don't hear love. They hear a trap. This is the paradox they live with. They want to be wanted, but fear being needed. They crave closeness, but feel smothered when it arrives. They long for intimacy, but back away when it starts to settle in. It's not because they're cold. It's because they're overwhelmed, not by you, but by the internal collapse they associate with being relied on. You see, avoidants learned early that being needed came at a cost. Maybe they had to parent their parents, or suppress their emotions to keep the peace, or become this strong one to avoid punishment or shame. So now, in adulthood, when someone needs them emotionally, it awakens a memory of drowning. So they pull back, set hard boundaries, or withdraw completely, not because they don't care, but because their body is screaming, if I let you depend on me, I'll lose myself. And here's the hardest part. Even their own needs feel threatening. They're not just afraid of your dependence, they're afraid of their own. So when they start to feel themselves growing attached, they panic, because needing someone, that's the one thing they promised themselves they'd never do again. So love becomes a balancing act, a tightrope walk between connection and collapse. They want to be close, but not consumed. They want to depend, but not dissolve. So they keep you close enough to feel comfort, but far enough to feel control. That's why sometimes, even after a beautiful night, a deep conversation, a tender moment, they go quiet the next day. It's not rejection, it's recalibration. Their nervous system is overwhelmed by the weight of attachment. And you're left confused, questioning everything, wondering if you did something wrong. But you didn't. You just bumped into the boundary where their nervous system says, no more closeness. I can't hold this safely yet. So how do you love someone who's afraid of being needed? You remember that pressure and connection are not the same. You let closeness be an invitation, not a demand. You model what healthy interdependence looks like, not smothering, not abandoning, but showing up with spaciousness. And if you're the one afraid of dependence, hear this. Needing someone doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. You're allowed to lean. You're allowed to reach. You're allowed to want someone to be there and stay. It doesn't make you needy. It means you're healing. You spent years surviving alone, but you don't have to keep surviving. You're allowed to start living. And living means letting people in, not to carry you, but to walk beside you, healing the freeze, rewiring the avoidant nervous system. They weren't born avoidant. They became that way, slowly, silently, out of necessity. And if something can be learned, it can be unlearned. Avoidance is not a life sentence. It's a survival response. And survival responses can be softened, rewritten, healed. But healing doesn't begin in the mind. It begins in the body. Because the body is where the shutdown lives, where the freeze took root, where the armor was welded. You can't logic your way into connection. You have to feel your way back into it, safely. So what does healing look like? It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It doesn't happen overnight. It's slow. quiet, layered, like letting yourself sit with discomfort instead of fleeing. Letting someone see your sadness without apologizing for it. Letting your body stay soft when it wants to tense. It's reaching out, even when your hands shake. It's replying to the message, even when silence feels safer. It's choosing presence, again and again, until your nervous system learns, I can be close and still be me. If you love someone avoidant, your role is not to fix them. It's to be a steady presence, not a savior. Because healing doesn't come from pressure. It comes from permission. Permission to feel, to fall apart, to try again. And if you are the avoidant, you've survived so much. But you don't have to survive love. You can let it feel safe. You can let it be soft. You can learn to trust what was once terrifying. Start with your body. When you notice yourself shutting down, pause, breathe, don't run. Just stay. Not for them, for you. To show yourself that staying isn't collapse. That closeness doesn't have to mean danger. That you don't have to disappear to be loved. Because somewhere inside you, beneath the freeze, beneath the silence, beneath the I'm fine, is a version of you that still aches for connection. And that version of you is not too much, not too needy, not too broken. Just scared and ready to be met with compassion instead of shame. And maybe that's why you found this video. Maybe you're tired of the cycles, tired of being misunderstood, tired of either chasing or retreating. Maybe you're ready for a new story, one where you don't have to freeze to feel safe, one where closeness doesn't cost your identity, one where love and autonomy can coexist. And if that's you, start here. Start now. Let this be the moment where something shifts. Not all at once, but slowly, tenderly, intentionally. Because no matter how long you've been frozen, you are thawing. If this spoke to you, if it stirred something inside your chest, like a part of you finally being seen, then stay with us. Subscribe for more content that speaks with your nervous system, not against it. Like the video to let the algorithm know this kind of softness matters. And share it with someone who needs to hear. They're not distant. They're just frozen. But frozen doesn't mean gone. It just means waiting for the right warmth to come along. And that warmth might just begin with you.